Just want to give a quick scenario addressing. Um, Someone recently was trying to dig our work down. Um, I did this book, Roy Shaw, Mean Machine, about 2.5 years ago now. I did it with Roy's only biological son, Gary, of, as far as I'm aware, his only son. I'm led to believe that Roy only had 2 children. And since this book has came out, there's obviously been a very public fallout between Roy's children, which has nothing to do with me, by the way. I'm not involved, never have been, don't really want to be. But what I did do was I did that book with Gary Shaw. Now, I've known Gary Shaw over 10 years. I like him, I trust him, I get on great with him. And he asked me, would I, which I was greatly honoured, by the way. I was really privileged that he asked me, because there's a lot of writers out there. Although I didn't know Roy Shaw, never met him, I'd read about him, I'd heard of him since around the turn of the millennium. I remember first seeing him in W. Smith's Waterstones on his book Pretty Boy. You know, it's quite a chilling, iconic picture of Roy with that stare, that, you know, them eyes. And when I did that book, I commented to Gary a couple of times. I said, it's like literally looking at your dad. Because obviously anyone who knows who Gary Shaw, you've seen him. He's the absolute ring and double of his father. And Roy's other child is, for that matter. So obviously the Shaw genes were, the Shaw DNA is very, very strong. Anyway, I did that book. So that's Roy Shaw, Mean Machine. So Roy Shaw was a former unlicensed British heavyweight champion, holder of the original governor title. He was a dangerous Category A prisoner and property tycoon. Whether you loved him or loved him, his charismatic life and times are now immortalised within the pages of this book. Mean Machine is the most accurate account of the legendary East End hardman to date. Right, so that's that book. Now, as I said, as far as I'm aware, as far as Gary Shaw is aware, he's Roy's only son. So, you know, regardless of who's fell out and what's been said and who's trying to drag our name through the mud and ruin our project and belittle it and try and make out it's full of shit, at the end of the day, right, Gary Shaw was Roy's only son. So, you know, listen, there's a lot of controversy in crime books. People think, oh, you haven't got the right to do it. You shouldn't be doing that. He was a bad guy. You know, even though a lot of my books support registered charities, I always get that shot at me. One thing I always get shot at me is, well, you didn't know Lee Duffy, you didn't know Paul Sykes, you didn't know Roy Shaw. Why are you writing about him? Well, listen, I don't think the people who've written books on Adolf Hitler knew him, unless they're about 147 years old. So I never get that point. Obviously, it was thoroughly researched. But what I want to say is, that book, right, is the memoirs of Gary Shaw. Now, I personally think, just my opinion, doesn't count for a lot, but I think more than anyone on the planet, right, maybe along with his sister, that if anyone has a right to write a book about Roy Shaw, it's their children. Now, that book, when I finish with it, right, as I do with every single book I've ever done, that book was sent to Gary Shaw. He read it. There was a few things he might have said in temper that he said, oh, take that bit out, add that bit in. But that is, overall, Gary Shaw's artwork, written work, right? I didn't know Roy Shaw. What I did, a monkey could have done it. I sat there with a dictaphone, got a contract drawn up. Yes, I added an introduction at the start of the book, which says, that's my words. Obviously, what got me interested in Roy Shaw, why I think he should have a book written. But predominantly and overall, that book is Gary Shaw on his father. Right, so at the end of the day, Gary Shaw has every single right on this planet to write a book about his dad. Regardless of whether now certain people in the family have fallen out and are now trying to, make out it's full of lies. It could be 100% the truth. It could be 100% lies. I can't do nothing about that. When I write a book on someone, I can't sit down with them. I can't tie them up to a lie detector test. All I can do is write what they tell me. And I firmly believe, Gary, he's never been, although who his father is, he's never been a wannabe gangster. He's always worked for a living. He's a man who's done well for himself. Raised a lovely family, got a lovely missus. And done really well for himself and is secure. So this book was not about any kind of money. It was about Gary Shaw having the right to speak of his memoirs of his father. And some of the stories in that book, Gary, I think Gary said, listen, we were brought up in care. There were certain things in my dad's book that he didn't put. That was, it wasn't true. One story, which people have been pretty vocal about, and I'm going to address it now, was in that book, it says Roy Shaw had ties to Jimmy Savile. Now, we stand by that, right? Well, I do, and Gary does, because in 1973 or 1975, whenever it was, Jimmy Savile, believe it or not, was a pretty cool person to know. He was friends with the royal family. He was always on the telly. He was a pretty influential person who, his name would, I imagine, carry a lot of weight and influence certain decisions. Now, the reason Gary said he bumped into Jimmy Savile was, he said, when himself and his mother and his sister travelled to Berkshire, which is where Broadmoor Hospital was, he said the Broadmoor Hospital is about 5 miles away from the train station. So Jimmy Savile, who had his own keys in Broadmoor at the time, who Roy was very familiar with, as most patients were in Broadmoor, he done Roy a favour and picked Gary up and his sister and his mother in a car. Gary said he was very flamboyant, bit of a weirdo. Don't know what gave him that idea. Used to walk about with a chain with a lot of keys on it and a watch on, a big clock, he said. And Gary said, he made jest of it. He said, Jamie, he said, it's a good job I was an ugly little bastard. But all he done basically was Jimmy Savile picked members of the Shaw family up, drove them 5 miles to Broadmoor, and that was it. Now, it's been kind of twisted by certain people to say that, what's Roy Shaw? Roy Shaw hated nonsense and he'd be turning in his grave. He linked to Jimmy Savile. This was 50 years ago. None of that come out about Jimmy Savile till 2010, 11 years ago. So, listen, if that happened, right, I'm very sure Gary Shaw, there's no need to lie. No need to lie at all. Not financial gain. In actual fact, I'm not going to mention but Gary gives all the proceeds of that charity to a fantastic cause. I'm not allowed to say because he said he'd rather remain private. He said he'd rather remain, he's not doing it for any kind of pat on the back. So, in actual fact, the reality is Gary has not earned 1 penny from that book. But in hindsight, or, cards on the table, he has every right, more than anyone on this planet, or maybe along with a certain sibling of his, to speak on a dad who was very, very well known, very, very notorious, infamous, legendary, Gary said, I've had it all my life. He said I would walk about and people would look past him to get to his dad because he was a bit of a superstar. So that's basically what that book was about. It come out on the... Just give me a minute. This book is so the book is actually itself dedicated to Stephen Shaw, which is Gary's son, and it was Roy Shaw's grandson. Now, Stephen Shaw sadly passed. He was only in his mid-30s in March 2016. So that book is dedicated to the memory of Gary's son, Stephen, Roy Shaw's grandson. Right. So I think that's a wonderful gesture. I think it's touching, and as I said, I think he has absolutely every single right to. Whether people come out and do their own books on Roy, people who knew him, people who relate to him, nothing to do with me. It's none of my business. If they do, I would be the first one who would say, absolutely, that person has got more than a right. And on Gary Shaw's behalf, who is a close friend of mine, trust him, you know, of everything, and likewise vice versa. So if I applaud Gary for doing that, and it was an absolute pleasure working with Gary, and I'm sure we'll work again in the future. We've got a few things going, a few ideas scattered about. It might not please everybody else, and as I said, people have been vocal about it, and I'm sure you're aware. But that's it's nothing to do with me. I didn't know enough about Roy Shaw. I wouldn't know where to start without Gary Shaw's input. So, I'm representing Gary, and whether we do stuff in the future or next year, whatever, when that gets happened again, Gary will be fully 100% in charge, and he'll say, no, I'm not happy with that, take that bit out, blah, 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 until it's done. So, quite frankly, my loyalty is with Gary Shaw and Gary Shaw alone. So I just wanted to clear it up. That book is near enough 200 pages. It's got a few people in their opinions of Roy. Chris Lambrianou, Ronnie Richardson, who was married to the very well-known Charlie Richardson. The boxer Dominic Negus is in it. He knew Roy quite well. The actor Paul Parrish is in. Cared for Roy at the end of his life quite a lot. So they're sharing their opinions on them. So that listen, I didn't know Roy Shaw, and all the other people didn't know about. But when you're working with people and you're speaking to people on behalf who knew him, as close as that, you don't need to do that. All you need to do is make sure that you do a professional job, and the grammar and the spellings are immaculate, and get it out there, PR it, speak to all the papers. Now, when that book come out, I spoke to 46 different newspapers, radios, podcast, anyone, and out of that 46, 6 done the Roy Shaw story. It made the national press. Daily Star done the story. If you Google that, it's up. The Dagenham and Barking paper, an Essex paper. Obviously Gary's from Lincoln, so I think the Boston paper done it. But 6 covered the Northern Echo up the northeast covered it. So 6 people covered that because it was the voice of Roy's only son, Gary Shaw, and in my opinion, he had every single right to do that. So before you listen to certain people who try and discredit a book, which I sat with Gary for Friday, I sat with him for 3 days, and just spoke on his father, and so that book is an end product of what was inside Gary Shaw's head on his dad. So that book is available to download on Kindle. It's $4.95. What else? It's paperback is on Amazon, eBay, Waterstones. Might be on audio as well. I'm not sure. I know most of my books are now on audio. So you can get it, and anyone who's it's not this. At the end of the day, as I said, I think I've banged on a bit now. That's done by Roy's only son, not me. Didn't know him, and you know, as I said, I think him more than maybe along with maybe one else, it was 50-50 on, you know, Roy's offsprings, and I don't think there's anyone who could probably give a more accurate account on who he really was than Gary, and also his other child as well. Whether she does or not, I don't know. Whether she's just happy ruining our work, I don't know. Don't really care as well. As I said, my loyalty is with Gary Shaw, and I'm not getting into anyone else's family disputes. Nothing to do with me. And that's that. So anyone who wants to click on, the link is in the bio for this video. There's a Facebook page called Roy Shaw Meme Machine, run by myself, Gary Shaw, Warcry Publishing. There's a Twitter account as well, which is at mean, and then there's a space, and it's Roy. So there's a Roy Shaw Meme Machine Twitter, and you know, that's with myself and Gary. And you know, one of the things Roy wanted more than anything in life, I'm told, was for a film to be done, and his life to be dramatised. And there was a few, you know, which we speak about this in this book actually. I know there was possibly Billy Murray, Tamer Hassan, Danny Dyer involved about certain projects, and it never got off the ground. And you know, Gary's not against that. I know there's talk of a film last couple of years. I don't know where it's gone, but you know, Gary just doesn't want anyone making a mockery of his dad, and rightly so, his legacy, because the back of that book says, love him or love him. One thing, you know, he didn't lack was notoriety, and as I said, I think I said many times, Delroy Showers always tells me, every time I speak to him, he said notoriety in itself is a form of success, and Roy Shaw certainly left a massive trail of notoriety. Arguably, maybe the most notorious man to ever walk the streets of London, the East End of London. I don't know, all these really great characters are of yesteryear. A lot of them are from the East End, and the Craze, Lenny McLean's from Hoxton, Craze, Bethnal Green, Jack the Ripper, Whitechapel. Roy was from Stepney. You could just go on and on and on. Dominic Negus, a book I did, he's from Bethnal Green. Lots of always the most colourful characters come from the East End, and there's not many of them left. I was in the East End about 6-7 weeks back, and yeah, it's changed, I imagine, from many years ago. Most people these days don't even speak English, so there's not many of the old true Cockney, born in the sound of Bowbells, Pie and Mash, West Ham, Alf Garnett, all that kind of, you know, that's a real dying breed. They're like the dinosaurs. But Roy was everything above that and more. So yeah. Anyway, guys, anyone wants to judge for yourself and not listen to any of the silly nonsense, then Roy Shaw Meme Machine by Jamie Boyle by Gary Shaw with myself is available. And yeah, the easiest place is to get it from Amazon. Anyone who wants any more information, give us a message on Twitter at JamieBoyle10. And as I said, there's a Roy Shaw Twitter account. There's a Roy Shaw Meme Machine Facebook account. And, you know, Gary is on there, so if anyone wants to get in touch with him. But as I said, I'm just putting this video on his behalf. I like Gary, I trust him. And, you know, whatever I do with him next couple of years will purely be up to his satisfaction. And as I said, and this is mainly the reason why I've done this video, he was Roy's son, you know, so whether people aren't happy with that, he's got a right to do a book on his dad. All right, guys, have a great weekend. Don't forget to click and subscribe to this video. God bless. Have a great day. Thank you.